Sanctuary is just a big umbrella of safety and security that you can come under and practice in whatever way you want, right? Because we're not here to tell anybody how they should work with the mushrooms. We have a code of ethics that basically is the golden rule, right? And as long as you abide by that, then you are welcome to be a member of our community. We will share open source all of our information with our community in the effort to help see every individual grow so that society as a whole can grow. I think we're on a pretty significant evolutionary cusp as humanity, and psychedelics they are playing a significant role in that. So the quicker we can just get this out to the people without having to wait for, the man to keep telling us what we can and can't do, then the faster that's going to happen.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Psychedelic Conversations. Today, I have Eric from the Psanctuary Church. Welcome, Eric. Can't wait to dive into this conversation with you.
Happy to be here, Susan.
So just to give you a little bit of a context to our listeners, I just want to say a few things about you. And is that correct? How do you say sanctuary? Sanctuary with the P?
Sanctuary. It's it never ceases to surprise me when people say P sanctuary, because we never say P psilocybin or P psychiatry, yeah. But for some reason it doesn't seem to connect for people sometimes.
Sure. No, I was just gonna read it like Sanctuary Church. So great. Right. Okay. So Eric was born in Kentucky countryside, broke from his conservative origins and immersed himself in the esoteric. A father of four, Eric has devoted his life to expanding spiritual, physical, and mental health through embracing the natural world. And I'm really fascinated that you have been facilitating psilocybin experience for 24 years. So, wow, that's so many questions I have for you, Eric. So, heads up. And you are the founder of the world's first psilocybin mushroom retreat, the nation's most public sacred mushroom church, and 3 gourmet and psychedelic mushroom farms. And you are one of the world's most leading experts in the psilocybin mushroom cultivation and facilitation. Wow, so much to talk about right now. And I'm so, honored to have you here, and the work that you do. It's incredible. Thank you.
Thank you.
And as always, we dive into your story. So please tell us what brings you to this work.
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, kind of like the bio touched on there, it really started with the love of the natural world. Growing up in the countryside, that's where I spent most of my time, was outdoors. And early on, it started with the love of herpetology. I began hunting and collecting snakes when I was very young. And that has just kind of continued to be a big part of my life. It opened doors into just so many other beautiful aspects of nature, which eventually became mushrooms. I didn't start with psychedelic mushrooms. I started my love for mycology started with shiitake and reishi and all the gourmet and medicinal mushrooms that are out there. That then opened my eyes to psychedelics. I was actually pretty untrusting of psychedelics in my younger years, because of all the false information that was purported mainly by the United States government around the world. And so cannabis, kind of opened that door for me. And then I had a couple of LSD experiences and then mushrooms, and it just married all of my loves together. I've always loved the weird. My coffee cup here even still says "Keep it weird," has a platypus on it. So it's like the psychedelic world felt like home to me. And then that it was so natural just was an added bonus.
Yeah, sounds wonderful. And you also the founder of the, can we say, the first church, Psilocybin Church? And
There's a couple of other psilocybin churches that have been operating before Sanctuary. I think most of them have been pretty underground. We are very, very public. So not the first, but probably the most public right now.
And how was that to navigate? How do you navigate the landscape? Because it's still very sensitive around the legal system. So how does that, if you wish to walk us through the whole process, if that's okay?
Well, I mean, we're still walking through the process. I mean, we are an established church. We were founded in 2021. Yeah, legally anyway. We had several attorneys that we worked with in setting up the organization. And it's just kind of ongoing evolutionary process. Having done all the work that we did in Jamaica with the retreat centers there really prepared us in many ways for what we're doing. But what we didn't have through those retreats that's so different about Sanctuary is the community that's building around it. And that's first and foremost what we're really doing here, is building or gathering, maybe. I mean, the psychedelic community already exists in many ways. And we do have a lot of people who come to psilocybin for the first time through Sanctuary and become part of our community. But that's just the most important, most valuable aspect of what we're bringing to the table is this public community of experienced individuals who provide support for each other. So that, another kind of lesson learned from our work in the retreats is that anytime you're doing this kind of typical wellness model, whether it is through a clinical format or if it is a more informal retreat type setting, you're almost inevitably going to end up with a hierarchical kind of top down, who's the boss telling everybody how to do the thing. And even though I was the boss, I hate that shit. That is not how I operate. I love for us to all come together, bring our ideas together and create something in unison rather than someone telling other people how to do things. So I think that's really what makes Sanctuary very different, probably even from a lot of the churches, because as I'm sure many churches have that same hierarchical model, which is what we are really dead set on not incorporating into our program.
Yeah, sounds great. And interestingly, today I just came across Gabor Mate's little bit of a clip. He was saying that the psychedelic work requires community.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just bring a bunch of people to a ceremony or expect them to go through. It's not like the model of the Western lenses of like individualistic. He was saying this individualistic and competitive world is not serving, especially with the psychedelic work. It just doesn't serve, and it's the biggest travesty. And I thought, as you're saying this now, I was thinking the same thing. And over here in the UK, we are also trying to rather bring in a community than just the hierarchical system of who is in charge and who is not, and really educate everyone equally so that they can all be informed. And I love your model. I think going forward, do you think, especially with the psychedelic work, this is the model that's probably going to survive?
Yes.
Equally hard though. Do you agree? Because it's what I really have. My biggest challenge has always been because of the such a long Western lens of this hierarchical system. It's kind of ingrained in this. It's so wired in people that sometimes they find that absurd or interesting or not trusting. Do you know what I mean? How do you navigate?
100%. Yeah. That's an excellent question, and it's something that we are constantly reevaluating. Are we living true to our belief system, right? And so checking to make sure, because it just like it inevitably creeps in. Like, I'm a dad. And what did I grow up with? Well, you do what dad says. Why? Because dad says so. And so reprogramming that in my relationship with my children, with my wife, my friends, and our community, it does take a conscious effort. It's one of the reasons that we have completely revamped our ministry over the last year. When we started the church, even though we were intentionally trying to create something very different from the retreat model, we found ourselves kind of unconsciously doing the same things that we did. And so, every few months we just take a look around, like, okay, what are we doing? Is this really true to how we believe this should operate? And then we shift it. So for example, in most churches, you have the minister who is the head of the church, right? Well, what we're doing differently is we have created the world's first sacred mushroom seminary, which is an educational organization to ordain other ministers. And we have 4 levels of ministry right now that we're working with. The first one is what we call the subtle sacrament minister, and that's just training and ordaining someone to microdose themselves, right? We call microdosing the subtle sacrament. Then we have what's called the myself minister, and that is ordaining someone to be a minister of their own self. And this is my ultimate belief, is that no one needs someone else telling them how to practice with mushrooms, right? And then you can step it up and you can be a friends and family minister, so you can administer sacrament to your close circle. And then there's also the ability to become a community minister, which is kind of like myself, working with people who are more traumatized, maybe bigger groups, higher doses. I mean, there's definitely a graduated level of skill with psychedelics, and I don't know that that's really being considered in this kind of renaissance as well necessarily. It's kind of like, well, you had 2 psychedelic experiences, so you know how they work. And as someone who's taken mushrooms minimum 500 times, I can tell you that I continue to learn something new about the mushroom and the experience almost every time that I take them. So it has, I think, if we're going to change society, we're seeing our monetary systems are shifting, we're seeing our government systems shifting, our healthcare. And if we're going to do, like you're saying, to really ensure that we don't fall back in those habitual ways of thinking and behaving, then we have to stay, constantly aware, constantly questioning ourselves, never just accepting that what we're doing is the right way.
I love this. I love this model, Eric. I can see beyond it. Like, when you say there is the ordination levels, I think this is great. And because like for example, our community, we also reinforcing the self-agency, right? Reinforcing the self-agency. How do we activate that inner healing intelligence in people? How do we activate how do we allow the right conditions and the support for them to actively practice to repattern themselves back into this self-agency? It's really hard because one of the most, forget the psychedelic work, but alone, just working in therapy, just a casual therapy with other modalities, what I find the most difficult thing is that people don't even think that they have agency, that they can have the agency and they can have the choice.
Yes.
So I can see beyond your ordination levels, because then people are, obviously this is a process for them to really claim that self-agency slowly with accountability, like someone's watching over rather than telling them what to do.
Right.
But providing the right conditions and the accountability. So I find that really valuable.
Yeah, community support. Model. Yeah. Encouragement. That's what most of us just need, right? We don't need someone telling us what to do. We just need somebody cheering us on as we figure it out, And as you said that around, kind of how we have in some ways forgotten that we have agency. In the early stages of this kind of retraining and reframing, I think that it certainly can create some discomfort. There have been many, many times where in working with someone in the psychedelic space, in an effort to help that person reclaim their power, then I completely back off. And I'm there. They can see me. I'm a support. I'm there with you. But I want you to make it through yourself. I want you, as much as possible, to help pick yourself up so that when you come out of there, you're not looking at me like your savior. Nobody else needs to, you see your own power. And so, it just, as we make that adjustment societally, individually, it can create some fear and discomfort. But once we get over that kind of threshold, then the freedom, which I appreciated, that the freedom that allows, like, that's what we're all ultimately going for, even though we may not know it.
I love that. That's the ultimate liberation. I think, giving people that self-agency is the ultimate liberation. When they start to decide for themselves, when they decide to act upon what they think or feel their truth, and not relying, because right now we have this codependency, universal, everywhere, in every country, every groups, every nations. And I think everything, whole systems, the foundation, the fundamental systems are built on that. And then the psychedelics are coming. They want that to be changed and dissolved, and encouraging us to step into that self-agency. And you're right, in the beginning, people really get discomfortable, and really, it's a very situation of despair and not knowing, and it's kind of navigating the unknown, the fear of, for the first time, stepping into the agency. I know I go on, but I can go on self-agency, like entire episode.
No, it's so real. Yeah, it's so real. I mean, I think right now what it's bringing to my mind is in our financial systems. Here in the U.S., where there's a lot of talk about universal basic income. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not involved in politics, but to me, that sounds like more of the same, right? Like, I love seeing people step into their power. My children, my family, myself, my friends, my community, wherever that is. And the more we just kind of continue to hand out resources instead of us seeing our own resourcefulness, it's just perpetuating that same colonial mentality. I don't know how familiar you are with say like the Willie Lynch letter or American slavery. My undergrad was in, minored in Pan-African studies, and that's how I ended up in Jamaica. I was a long love for the African diaspora and studied all of that. And this codependency was an intentional tactic that was used by oppressors to perpetuate slavery. And we don't realize that we are still living in that legacy, and which is ironic, that psychedelics are kind of in some ways being applied in that same manner. But I have nothing but confidence that as more and more people encounter the psychedelic experience, that they will come to understand that it is truly a liberative experience. This is not something that even is best, I believe, I don't believe it's best housed under a clinical therapist. This is something that, again, why we started a church is because by its very nature, the psychedelic experience is a mystical experience, right? It's an ineffable experience. And so to go, and I love therapists. I've been to therapists. I've got many friends that are therapists. I got no criticism with therapy in and of itself, but to try to take an experience that cannot be put into words into a scenario that is built on attempts at verbal description, it's almost comical.
Mm-hmm. And also limited. I think it's limited because, especially when the therapists are only coming into the space, because it's now becoming trendy. Because you kind of touched on this earlier a little bit. You said it's not something that you could start serving after 2 experiences. This is an ongoing, probably lifelong. I mean, I had a few amazing guests here. They spent their entire lives out in the wilderness, communing with these indigenous people and really learning things from bottom up. And the one thing they continually reinforce and tell us is that this is a relationship.
Yes.
This is a relationship with nature, and you are part. This is your relationship. It is for life. This is not just one-time experience in Peru or Costa Rica. This is a relationship. And there was especially one guest said, before his teacher allowed him to take the medicine, he had to do so many other things to really earn that, or not earn, but do you know what I mean? To be able to contain and commune with this ineffable experience. So I really value those experiences and people's wisdom in that sense. And especially now, we're going to see a lot of training organizations just popping up everywhere and training people in 1 year, just because it's becoming trendy. So what are your thoughts? I'm sure you've seen so much happening in the last 20 years, God. Right?
Yeah, that is such a huge topic that could be an entire, long episode in itself, but it's worth touching on for sure. It just kind of was in a LinkedIn conversation a minute ago. Someone was talking about this whole thing, and it's just like psychedelics have kind of become the next place to get famous, is the joke that I was making, and that's just not what these are about. And I have seen, I can't tell you how many therapists that I have seen come into the psychedelic space who came to work in Jamaica saying, I know this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And they would come down and work for a few ceremonies and see how crazy it can get at these really high doses. And just like, yeah, no, they decided very quickly it wasn't for them. So I think we're going to see a lot of that in terms of the training. So, this has been a real challenge for me. It was, it took me a very, very long time before I felt anywhere close to competent enough to administer psilocybin to strangers, right? Like for many, many years, I only worked with my very close friends and myself. And as time went on, my friends would bring in friends, and I would slowly start working with people who I kind of knew secondhand or whatever. But when the mushrooms told me to start the retreats in Jamaica, and that's plainly what happened, during a mushroom trip, they said, this is what you're going to do. And I was like, no, I ain't doing this. And they're like, yeah, you are. And I resisted for about a year, and they just kept telling me, this is what you're going to do. And so finally I just accepted. But even then, that was in 2009. And by that point, I had had 10 years of very devoted relationship with the mushrooms. And even in 2011, when it told me this is what was going to happen, I took almost 2 years dosing myself very high levels in the wilderness alone, at least twice a month, to just get as much exposure to every shade of this experience before I would start working with other people. And now, after training people in Jamaica and training people within the church, there are times that I have some internal challenge, with the fact that our my self-minister training is an 8-week program, right? 8 weeks, 8 months could never prepare you for the varieties of experience, the situations you can find yourself in, especially when working with other people. But what my hope is, and what my knowing is through my own personal experience and through the experience of traditional cultures as well, is that working with someone else and the training can only take you so far. You've got to have the experience over and over. You've got to develop the relationship. And so what we are providing within our training that I think is going to be the real benefit after the 8-week program, then we will continue to have optional weekly calls that people can stay enrolled and subscribe to those calls at a minimal fee. It's like $20 a month, to have some real weekly ongoing support and community so that these individuals can be working with the medicine themselves and then bringing their experiences back into this container of knowledge where it can help them unpack and understand a little more. I mean, one of the things that I did find or have found in my work training is that I can impart more knowledge over the course of 6 months than I learned on my own over the course of 6 years. And I mean that, when for years and years and years, it was just me administering to people here in my community in Jamaica. And then as I started training people in Jamaica, I could see that those individuals were they were gaining knowledge so much faster than I did, just because I was able to. And it's so many times it's not even through verbal communication. There was a therapist that I was working with that I recall once where there was a young man and his mother were there on retreat, and this therapist, she had been kind of involved in psychedelics for a while, but she came to really make a career out of this. And there was this kind of energetic exchange that was going on between four of us there, and the therapist being one of them. And she didn't really understand what was happening, but she was playing a role in it. And by being able to be with me and know that what she was experiencing was real, right? Because I was able to, not even with words, like waves of energy would move through and transitions would happen, and she would look at me, and I could just kind of give her a knowing nod, and you could see that light go off in her eyes, but when you're working with this stuff by yourself, and you're not with anyone that has real experience, everybody's trying to figure out what's going on, and because it's so out of context for anything that we have any kind of direct experience with, I think we often doubt ourselves, or we make assumptions that are maybe not true. And so to have a team and have a network of people who are working together, collecting data, informing each other's practice, then everybody can grow in skill so much more quickly.
I love this model. I really do. Reminds me of the esoteric way of having a mentor who's gone through the awakening before the individual. Not in a hierarchical, but it's more like someone who's walked the path before you. Having them holding your hand is definitely going to speed or kick the momentum in, rather than just trying to figure this out yourself. I think this is the universal law that applies to everything. Like you said, teaching, training within a framework of 6 weeks to year, 2 years, it doesn't matter how long. I know that there is an organization, actually, they're doing a master's in really training with psychotropic medicines. They've got all kinds. And I understand this could really be beneficial, but I think my concern is always, who are those people that are teaching these programs and courses? Because who's validating them? And like you said, are they accountable to another, place, people, organizations? Because this is where the problem is at. And since the psychedelic medicines are revealing experiences, and we have seen this again and again, people can translate and interpret this experience really the opposite way, and then put themselves in this hierarchical, here I am, this is, I'm your teacher, and I will tell you how it is going, rather than someone who's conscious, who's done the work, who understands the work with the medicine, knows that you just got to facilitate and be there and witness, and just energetically just be there. And this is the key detail that could really create that momentum in people working and learning more efficiently to work with the medicine. So I really understand what you mean.
Well, don't you think that's also why it's really important for the educators, the trainers, to be in an ongoing relationship with the medicine? Because if you're not, then that ego will get out of control, period. So it's one of the most valuable aspects that the psychedelics bring to the table is its ability for us to put ourselves in check. So I don't want anybody working with my community, training within my community, that is not actively practicing themselves. I don't like anyone even holding space for someone that's not actively working with the medicine themselves. I think it's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. Totally agree. Yeah. Well, these are great, valid points. So coming back to your observations again, what are you seeing we're heading towards in this new renaissance that, like you said, by the way, I like the joke about everybody's trying to be famous through psychedelics. Is it something like that? How did you say it? Yeah.
It's just the next place to get famous is through psychedelics. And I think we're going to see that for a while. There's going to be this hype for a while, and it's just gonna be interesting to watch it all unfold. But I think it seems to me that the hype within the next 5 years probably will taper off, because people who get in there and actually start doing the work are going to find out, for one, how fucking hard it is, right? Like, it is extremely taxing to spend 8 hours with 1 or 20 people who are on psychedelics, not to mention the preparation and the integration that is required as well. So I really think that what we're going to end up seeing after all the hype wears off is community supported models. And if they look like churches, or they look like, whatever it is, I mean, here in the States, the church is the most protected community support model that there is. And I really think that's what's going to survive the long haul, because what it's going to be people that are actually working with the medicine, who are then coming into their community and sharing their knowledge with others who are actually working with the medicine. So I appreciate it. I'm also like kind of, I don't like popular things. I don't really like pop culture. And so there's a part of me that has gotten a little sore at the way how psychedelics have been popularized. And it's like I roll my eyes a lot at all the microdosing coaches that there are out there, but I also know that like it's helping people and it's just part of the process. And if there's really one overarching lesson that has come through all of my time in the psychedelic space, it's just to trust the process. So rather than criticize, I want to have more of a humorous approach to it, kind of laugh at it and let it be what it is, and know that it's all going to work out. It's all good.
Yes, great. That's wonderful. And coming back to what you said about how difficult this work is. So the level of grit and the resilience and the capacity that it requires. It's when I did my first foundational work, it was a group of facilitators from all different backgrounds, and one native Peruvian, of course. It does become humorous after a while, because after every retreat, they would just sit there laughing. Who does this? Who does this? What kind of person with the right mind does this?
Yeah,
like, are we crazy? And
I know. I know. Yeah, I recorded a little video. I did a dose of LSD a few weeks back, and after it, I got thinking about, all of the stuff that I've seen, and I was just like, yeah, you got to be a little crazy to do this, to actually like enjoy it and to keep coming back to it,
Yeah.
But that's another thing. Like,
it's always, yeah.
I love that you said grit, because it implies not only the fortitude that we as facilitators have to have, but it also implies the rawness of the experience, right? That's another big joke that I get whenever I see like the pictures or videos of the psychedelic session in the living room with the eye shades and the 2 therapists, and then I'm like remembering all these times where I've got people screaming naked and puking. like that's not gonna that little room is not going to be able to contain the enormity of the psychedelic experience. And I love that. I grew up again, like growing up in the countryside, playing in the dirt. I love that. There's this point in a mushroom ceremony, 6 hours in, when the peak is passed and people are kind of like putting themselves back together, and you look around and everybody's just a mess of dirt and snot and tears and laughter. And I love the non-sterile nature of the mushroom experience. And again, that's why it's so funny for me to see it in the clinical sterile environment.
Yeah, I'm with you. And okay, so since the medicine responds to the environment and the setting, I have to share this with you. This is you'll love this. So we had this psilocybin facilitator, of course, with this group that I talk about. And he used to always say, now it's kind of making a lot more sense as I'm seeing the images, like you say, the eye shades, the music. There's all these like music list and all this prep and all of that. Anyway, and he used to say, when we, create a setting in the nature, how it should be in the right conditions, then the mushroom spirit comes in suits and ties, like suits and ties, meaning they respond differently to the setting, of course. And the more natural and the conditions are more, integrated in nature and there's freedom there, the medicine work is equally powerful, directly proportional to the setting. So I could just imagine that the clinical settings with two people, having those two people there, I would be really uncomfortable to have an eye shade that I can't see what they're doing, right? Because the paranoia will kick in.
Yeah. And the fact that they're not on any substance either, right? Like I do not like being around people who are not on mushrooms when I'm on mushrooms, period, and I very often take mushrooms with the people that I'm working with. I know that is a valuable part of this other type of work, now, and again, I'm not like completely throwing the clinical stuff out the window. It's got a place. But I'm pretty confident that it's not going to be the model that sustains.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's amazing. So I guess we got to have these little humorous moments in the work. Otherwise, just to keep the balance, just to keep keep it sane. But so let's move on to your projects. What would you say to our listeners? Because I just feel so honored to be able to speak to so many different, people doing great work, leading in this psychedelic renaissance. And of course, everybody resonates with different people and their work. So what are your projects currently? What are the things that you're working on? Anything that you would like to share?
The big thing is this minister training, putting the power back into the hands of the people. We have a goal after my LSD trip a few weeks ago. I was just kind of sitting there looking at, the creek and stuff. And this kind of communication came in that was said, you're going to ordain 1,000 people in the next year. And I don't know if that's, is that my imagination, or is that, being communicated to me? But that's kind of the goal that I have right now. I think to see 1,000 people standing up and taking back their power, and then showing others that they can do the same is really powerful. And it's not that we want to, I don't want to discourage people from going down the clinical route or whatever. But I do want to encourage people to understand that, it's all within them. And that's what the medicine is going to eventually show you anyway. So if we can just start from that premise, then we're actually going to be ahead of the game. And I think that, organizations like Psanctuary are, I think we're 10, 20 years ahead of where we are now. And that's where we're going as a culture is in many ways where we are as a community already. So that's the big thing that I really want to share with the world, is just to help as many people again. There's a bit of a bittersweetness to it, that it still requires certification from a legitimate organization for legal protection. But having been arrested for psilocybin and knowing what that can do to your every aspect of your life, then I just kind of reframe it. And it's a real privilege to be able to take all of our hard work and kind of create this umbrella. We have a saying at Psanctuary, we are one people under the mushroom. And that's kind of the image that I take into this, is that, Psanctuary is just a big umbrella of safety and security that you can come under and practice in whatever way you want, right? Because we're not here to tell anybody how they should work with the mushrooms. We have a code of ethics that basically is the golden rule, right? And as long as you abide by that, then you are welcome to be a member of our community. We will share open source all of our information with our community in the effort to help see every individual grow so that society as a whole can grow. I think we're on a pretty significant evolutionary cusp as humanity, and psychedelics they are playing a significant role in that. So the quicker we can just get this out to the people without having to wait for, the man to keep telling us what we can and can't do, then the faster that's going to happen.
Yeah, totally agree. And that's wonderful. Thanks for sharing your insights. One of the reasons that I wanted to speak with you is because, of course, I've been seeing your posts for a while now. We connected on LinkedIn, and I don't even know how we connected, because sometimes I just see a title, and if, obviously I'm in the area, so I'm interested in people that speak about psychedelics. And one of the reasons that I wanted to talk to is your LSD experience. Someone, if you're open to sharing, because someone who's been working with psilocybin, what would you say to us? I mean, the difference, and also I like the way that it's almost like LSD was giving you instructions what to do. This is what you're going to do. How do you evaluate that? Because someone who's never had any psychedelic experience and stumbled upon this conversation, they're going to say, what did LSD tell you? Do you know what I mean? So what would you like to share with us?
Well, I would first say that I have been and sometimes still am kind of the archetypal skeptic, right? I do not believe something just because I think it. I don't believe something just because it's presented to me in media. And even with the mushrooms, they told me to start the retreats, and I was like, for a solid year, I was like, I'm just imagining this shit. And so it's taken a lot of direct experiences for me to be able to confirm that there is an intelligence that is communicating with me in these states. I would also say that, Albert Hoffman, a staunch materialist scientist, said that the compound spoke to him from the storage drawer where it was, right? 20 something years after it was first synthesized. It just sat there in storage until it wouldn't stop calling to him. So, ultimately, I think that the study of psychedelics, the experience of psychedelics, is an exploration and an experience of consciousness. And that's really, like, consciousness is both form and function, right? Consciousness is the tool that we can use to improve, to expand our consciousness, if that makes sense. So, I think for someone who is brand new to this, probably going to take some Michael Pollan to help them get comfortable, but after you get past Michael Pollan and you want to talk to somebody that's actually been talking to the mushrooms, then we can have a conversation. LSD is one, though, that for years, I put down, in 2001, maybe I did a dose of LSD that was just phenomenal. And I was still then under the impression that, psychedelics were not good for you, that LSD was eating your brain. So I stopped taking LSD. And then, the research started coming back up, and we're seeing how, LSD is actually good for your brain. So I finally got exposed to some quality LSD, and it's now kind of coming around very frequently in the States here. And it's been a very close ally of mine, honestly, which is interesting to me because so much of, I love the natural world. You can't see it, but in front of me, there's probably 30 or 40 plants. I've got a big boa constrictor and a giant enclosure that's very naturalized. And, I love nature. I love plant-based medicine, but LSD is something that I have found to be an incredible ally in helping me reconnect to my childlike state, right? Mushrooms are a profoundly spiritual, a profoundly metaphysical experience. I absolutely have experiences with mushrooms that I've not been able to touch with any other compound, with any other practice. And I meditate regularly. I will do breath work. I try to put myself into expanded states of awareness and different modalities. And there's something very unique about the spirit of the mushroom. And having come back into LSD in the last 2 or 3 years, I have such a respect for its power. I have such a love for its ability to, again, put me back into touch with that playfulness, and I love how easy LSD is to drive. Mushrooms are not easy to direct. Mushrooms, you got to take some real practice to be able to kind of, keep the experience in a single lane, so to speak. It's just can be all over the place. And I like that. I like that unpredictability. I enjoy engaging with that. But I love how whenever I take LSD, I turn into a Ferrari, right? I'm a high performance Eric. And I love how with LSD, you can interface with, the public a little bit easier. Like I said, this is all an exploration of consciousness. And I've always had a love for altered states. I grew up here in Kentucky, was bourbon country, and we grew up on alcohol. And I always loved getting, fucked up, for lack of better words. But now that I have found safe ways to alter my consciousness and to push that envelope of stability, right? That's one of the things I think I love the most about LSD, is that it just really presents me with an opportunity you can either just fully engage with just the enormity of it all, or you could pull it back into kind of a quiet, reflective, peaceful state. I don't know if that's making any sense. Again, it's like hard stuff to talk about, right? But those are some of the things that I love about LSD.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, this is very powerful. And just wanted to say a couple of things about that as well. So LSD has been in my interest since last year, and I've done extensive research and reading, and I've been following all the, like you said, up and coming research and clinical trials have been done now. So many companies are doing a lot of great stuff with LSD.
Mm-hmm.
And how I started seeing it is, obviously for our listeners, we want to always put out the disclaimer that I always see, or now that I'm formulating ideas around LSD, that it responds to the container really well. So if this container is well-informed, trained and experienced, like yourself, who's been in it for decades and understands the non-ordinary states, I feel like that's what makes you the Ferrari in the experience.
Yeah.
But I could just imagine someone who's never had any of these experiences coming in and right. So, and also it is also true that many youngsters, they take LSD every weekend and just rave or, just go out clubbing. So there is that. So where I am currently with all these medicines, this is interesting. This is first time I'm sharing with you actually on this podcast. I decided to call the earth medicines. Not that LSD isn't an earth medicine, because it still comes from the fungi of the ergot, right? It's a derivative of nature still, but obviously it's isolated, it's gone through something. Here is my formulated idea. So the earth medicines being things that we can directly eat from the earth, which is mushrooms. And although we are, cooking the ayahuasca, but it's still the leaves and the tree bark and all of these. I found that there is, they carry something really universal and unique to them, which is they have an agenda, kind of. And I came across this thing, title, I think it belongs to a company, which I yet to research them and find out what they're about. It was psychedelics are cultivating us,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a camp or something like that. But one of my, person that contacted me said he's going to be in this camp. Psychedelics are cultivating us. I thought that was amazing. And it really fits in with mushrooms, ayahuasca, mescaline, and all of these beautiful medicines. And the reason I felt they had an agenda, because they just want us to be good humans. They just want us to really get our stuff together and show up and just kind of embrace this oneness, the collective.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
However, with LSD, it is more like the incredible intelligent technology that it doesn't have that kind of interest, but just wants to open the curtain for you, and then it's up to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
I found that it's very direct. It's almost like non-objective facilitator of wherever you want to go with.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I've not really thought about it in those terms, and I really appreciate that perspective. That does make a lot of sense. I mean, because LSD does seem so kind of like a blank canvas in and of itself, right?
Yeah.
I could also speak to, with psilocybin. So, cubensis is the species that has been most widely cultivated and most used, and it's been really tied up in the black market. Sorry, my dog is having a fit here next to me. It's been tied up in the black market. We've got all these kind of modified strains, and I'm not really opposed to that, but I do have a sense that there is this kind of collective memory of plants, right, of all life. It is conscious, and we have a strain or a species of psilocybin mushroom that's here in Kentucky. It's called psilocybe ovoidiocystidiata. It's a wood-loving mushroom. It was only first identified in 2007, and it's why, I'm not really sure, but it is everywhere now. Our city in the spring is just covered with this mushroom, and I pick lots of it. And so I've been cultivating cubensis for a very long time, and have felt, God, it's this very nuanced topic to get into, but I think it's worth exploring here. So when I developed a couple of strains of my own that I never dispersed as cultivars, I would give them to people to consume, but I never gave anyone the culture to grow out or anything like that. And I felt after several years of growing and consuming this specific strain alone that we were developing a real rich relationship, and that when I would consume psilocybin or cubensis mushrooms that were black market or grown by somebody else, that I could feel a difference. There was a different energy to them. Now, the ovoids, as we call them, ovoidiocystidiata, when I first started consuming them, originally I thought that the nature of the experience was solely based on their chemistry. But I have recently, or not recently, in the last several years, have started to feel very strongly that this mushroom in particular, because it was so recently discovered, it has no history of use, that it doesn't have the same kind of baggage that cubensis does. And as weird as this may sound to some people, these ovoids, unlike any other mushroom. So by growing cubensis for years, and I've grown oysters, and I had up a farm, we grew 15 varieties of edible mushrooms. But the ovoids, there have been numerous times that while sitting in meditation or out working in my garden, that this voice would come into my head and say, "We are here, come and get us." And I would go to the spot where they told me to go, and they were there. Right. So, like, all of that is to say that we are very unaware of the subtle energies that are associated with everything, right? Everything. Look at I'm drinking a cup of coffee here right now. And, you know, you have to look at, you're not just drinking a cup of coffee in a vacuum. You're drinking this cup of coffee that is a product of all of these years of cultural expansion and interaction and, agricultural practices, and all of that information is in that cup of coffee, right? So this is one of the problems that we had with Oregon, as we tried to expand Psanctuary into Oregon when they were legalizing psilocybin. They're requiring that every 2 pounds of dry mushrooms be assessed for potency and quality and contaminants and all this stuff that is, first of all, it's unnecessary. And second of all, you are taking my medicine that is an energetic sponge already and putting it into the hands of people that I don't know. I don't know if they care, if this is what they're bringing to the table. I mean, in indigenous cultures, to be able to go out and harvest the mushrooms, the sacred mushrooms, if that was a sacred practice that only young children in their purity were allowed to do, right? And as much as we kind of hype up the indigenous cultures, and I hear very often, I saw someone saying today, like, only indigenous people on LinkedIn, somebody saying only indigenous people should have the right to hand out psychedelics. I don't agree with that at all, right? And I think that our fetishism of indigenous cultures is really doing a disservice to their knowledge, because their knowledge maintains that mushrooms are energetic sponges, and whoever is picking or growing the mushrooms has a real impact on the qualitative nature of the experience. So we can say that we think indigenous people should be present for all these ceremonies, but that's just lip service if we're not actually listening to the teachings of these cultures that work with the medicines, right? So I don't know if that answers the question. If I went down a long circuitous route there.
Yeah. No, this is super valuable information. Yes, I do believe that these medicines carry imprints of who's growing them, who's cultivating, and the environment and the intention that goes in. I had a friend in Germany once. I remember he said that he cultivated one time cubensis. I think that he disciplined himself to specifically meditate around them and put loads of classical music and crystals and really giving all he's got to these mushrooms, knowing that they are medicines and an energetical imprint. So I get that. And also about the indigenous ways, I think that is so, again, it's dividing. It's always dividing. This kind of information and beliefs are so limited and dividing. I don't think indigenous people want that. They want the world to know and learn about their practices. I know so many, and they love that the Western world is now coming for it, and they are appreciating it. It's not, like you said, everybody's saying something that is so disturbing, this whole thing. And but we'll just keep doing, hopefully, the right thing, and let's see what unfolds. But I love all that you shared about the mushrooms, the relationship, and the strains, and each one carries, which we wanted to tie it with the LSD. And I totally believe the LSD doesn't have any of that, and it just works directly with the container that's here. And I love that too.
Well, and I do think that the chemist who is creating the compound has an impact on it. This became a very real experience for us in Jamaica. So, down there, I was, we're running retreats twice a month. I was taking mushrooms sometimes 6 times a month, right, with groups. And so I was very open, very, very sensitive to energy. And there was a wonderful villa there where we used to run retreats from, and we had a really good relationship with staff, and they just made wonderful food. But the person that ran the villa was very unpleasant, and occasionally she would mistreat the staff. And when she did, we would know it before we knew it because we could taste it in the food. And that is, I'm sure there are a lot of people that hear like it called bullshit, but like for real, you could feel the stress, you could feel the resentment, you could feel the love, you could feel the joy, whatever was in that food. You could feel it, and it's not just seasoning, you know. So you know, I think LSD and MDMA, all this stuff is the same. Yes, there is kind of a basic chemical foundation, but the whole is more than the sum of the parts, right?
Yeah, super interesting. Yeah. Wow, Eric, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for dropping all your wisdom. And as we come into the end of our conversation, I think we need to have you back, maybe to go into the cultivation and all of the other sides of the medicine work. Also, you have a podcast, Psilocybin Says. I thought that was so cool and cute. We'll add the link as well for our listeners, and all of your links, of course, if they wanted to get in touch. So what would you like to say as your last words of wisdom for this conversation?
Oh, I don't know. I think just trusting the process, you know, particularly in the psychedelic world, I feel like there's a lot of, you know, do this, don't do this. This person should do this. This person shouldn't do this. We should, you know, and I fall into that trap myself. And I guess this is really just kind of the reminder for myself, as much as for anybody that's listening, is that we are not in control. We are on an intelligent rock that is spinning around a nuclear reactor at 1,000+ miles an hour. We are not in control. There is an intelligence that is underlying all reality that we can trust, we can let go. We've got all these fears of war and all this stuff that's kind of trying to test our faith, if you will. And we can absolutely have faith in the process. We can know that we are eternal and that there's nothing to fear, that all we get to do really is just enjoy this ride.
Yeah. So beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking forward to having you on our podcast.
I know. I can't wait. I'm so excited. And thank you for inviting me kindly. So I'm just happy that we can be connected in this way. And surely I'll be on your, inbox asking you to come back very soon and maybe talk to us a little bit more different topics. And if you don't mind, of course.
Oh, I'd be happy to.
And follow your journey, and of course support your sanctuary and however we can, from the across the pond.
Thanks so much. Yeah, we've got some members in the UK. We have one of the most incredible human beings that I know is, or there's two women who I'm friends with in the UK who I'm trying to talk them into becoming psychedelic priestesses, because they're so powerful and so beautiful. And there's a lot of great work to do.
Amazing. Thanks again. And all the best. We'll be following your work. And thank you, everybody. Hope you guys enjoyed this session, this conversation. Please do get in touch with us. Drop it in the comments. Don't be shy. And connect with Eric or myself. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now. Thank you so much for joining us. Psychedelic Conversations podcast is designed to educate, inform, and expand awareness. For more information, please head over to psychedelicconversations.com. You can also share with your friends or leave a review so that we can reach more people. You can also join us in our private Facebook group to keep the conversation going. This show is for information purposes only, and it is not intended to provide mental health or medical advice. Thanks for listening.